Good evening, and welcome to another edition of PCN In Depth. I'm Julie Thompson. Tonight we're going to talk about the issues and matters in and around the town of Kingston. We'll take you to the police station to shed some light on necessary updates to their building and infrastructure, and also meet up with a conservation specialist to talk about the results of the open space survey. We'll take a trip on Kingston Bay for an update on the dredging project and finish our episode with our in-house studio guest, Thomas Bott, Kingston's town planner to Kingston's master plan. We'll start off tonight's episode at the Kingston Police Department. PCN's Brian Sullivan met up with Chief Splain and other town officials to talk about the building study performed on the police station.
Nothing about the street view of the Kingston Police Station indicates that there's anything wrong with the place. Ask anyone inside the building and you'll get a different story. The consensus is that the old building here on Main Street has outlived its usefulness. If all goes according to plan, within the next 1.5 to 2 years, they'll be in a new facility that's bigger and more accommodating. Just last May, the town put together a committee to look more deeply into the problems facing the department headquarters and what they can do to remedy the situation.
We did a tour of the complete building inside and out, came up with the conclusion that the building was not only substandard but completely inadequate for today's regulations for police station facilities.
As a town administrator and also the chief procurement officer, it falls on me to make sure that we follow the process in municipal law on the design and the building of any building in town. This building obviously is woefully inadequate for what it has to do today. The town seems to be kicking the can down the road over and over again when it comes to looking at this building. I think the time is now to really take a good look, get the designs done, and see if the town wants to go forward with building a new police station.
To find out just how woefully inadequate it was, we took a tour ourselves with the police chief. While the perspective may not be unbiased, we would at least be able to see for ourselves what the fuss was all about.
As we enter the building, you can see that it's a very small, cramped lobby space. A lot of times, the public talks to a police officer right out here because we don't have enough rooms or spaces to interview people. We really have one multi-purpose room, and if somebody's in there doing something and a second person needs to speak to a police officer, they're conducting their business here in the front lobby. And in the wintertime, this room is not even heated.
All of that, and we were only 2 feet in the doorway. As we ventured further in, we found the cramp theme to be a constant, whether it was the records room, where there was clearly not enough space for all of the files, or the dispatch room, crammed with 30-year-old equipment. And while the equipment is being upgraded, there isn't room to store the old stuff in the process. As we head down the hall to the detention room, we see that the room itself is pretty wide open, which can make it easy for the suspect to escape to another part of the building. And while the holding cells are right there, sometimes getting the suspect locked in can be an issue. Even the holding cells are in need of some updating.
There are people that come in and they look at our juvenile cells, our male cells, our female cells, and they point out our deficiencies. They tell us that we're not in violation of any law, but they point out that we have potential suicide hazards and that we need to be cognizant of those and that we're exposing ourselves to liability. This building was built in the early 80s. Computers weren't really, something that was part of police work or even considered back then as something necessary. And because there was no IT room built over the years, as technology advanced, they had to have a place to put it, and it was placed here in the basement. This basement is subject to flooding. There's sandbags in the corners because water will come in during heavy rainstorms. And here we are, the place that you need to rely on for your 911 emergency call, where water could affect our ability to take that call.
At this stage, it seemed the consensus had some merit. Whether it was exposed wires in the basement, the cramped quarters in the 911 call center, the lack of storage space for important files, the list could seemingly go on. But where were they planning to relocate to?
we started looking for sites, and we did look at 4 or 5 different sites in town. We came up with one that is actually owned by the school district, and we are looking into that and talking to the school committee to see whether we can somehow acquire that, because one of our goals is not to actually spend money on the cost of a piece of land. I'm convinced that, and the committee is convinced, that there's land in town that we can use and save that money.
This is a process that's been going on for about 9 years in town, and it's finally coming to fruition. I don't think the townspeople want to put this off any longer due to the conditions inside and not being up to code, and there's some other issues that could put the town in some type of liability if things happen. So it's something that we've taken care of Town Hall, taken care of the senior center, and a few other buildings. It's time to now look at this building and get that up for the next 50 years.
In Kingston, I'm Brian Sullivan for In Depth.
Open spaces like conservation lands and parks can have a huge impact on the community. Kingston did a comprehensive study on its open space and is now in the process of using their findings to make some beneficial changes.
The town of Kingston is updating their open space and recreation plan, and the purpose for that is to develop a plan so the town can properly manage its resources with regard to open space and recreation. Open space is a number of different things, and really it's all the land in Kingston that isn't developed, all the undeveloped land or land developed for recreation. And this is a good spot to talk about it because we have a number of different types of open space in this area. There's recreational open space, there's undeveloped land that's open space, and they serve a lot of different functions for the town. The recreational, there's passive and active recreation. Active recreation are things like organized sports and football, soccer, lacrosse, things like that. And the land around the schools, that's considered open space. And then there's passive open space or passive uses in open space, which include things like hiking, jogging, biking.
For the 2015 Open Space and Recreation Plan update, the town was really fortunate to be able to engage the Conway School of Landscape Design. They have a graduate program in sustainable landscape planning, and we were fortunate to be able to get 3 of the graduate students in their master's program to help the commission with doing their 2015 draft update, which was great for us because it's a very intensive process and we did not have a lot of time to spend on doing the update. The Conway School helped the Conservation Commission to develop a vision, goals, and action items, which are a big part of the open space and recreation planning process. And we are also required to engage the public and get feedback from the public. So we, or the Conservation Commission, drafted a survey that was available electronically and in print format for residents to fill out. The #1 response in the survey was drinking water protection, which was a great thing for the Conservation Commission and me to hear since we protect groundwater. But some other priorities were enhancing bike lanes or creating bike lanes, improving hiking trails, and also improving access to the waterfront. So those were 3 of the main priorities that were addressed for active recreation.
Open space in the town is some people refer to it as the green infrastructure. In a town like Kingston, you have the hard infrastructure, things, utilities like sewer and water, roadways. Those are things that a town or a community needs to have an enjoyable quality of life.
The Conservation Commission will be reviewing the final draft and getting that into final form within the next couple of weeks. And by mid-June, we'll be having our final public forum on the draft to solicit public feedback, and we'll be announcing that in various media outlets. And we look forward to hearing the comments from the public.
We've been hearing a lot about dredging from the county, and Kingston has taken up with a regional plan to dredge Kingston Bay and the Jones River. These locations have never been dredged in the history of the town of Kingston, and due to silt deposits and other natural occurrences, boaters have had a difficult time getting in and out of the bay at low tide. With recent approval of the funding, PCN met up with local officials to get a better understanding of this project.
At the April 12, 2015 Kingston Town meeting, voters approved a 5-year agreement with Plymouth County for joining a regional dredging project, including the Kingston Bay and Jones River. A sum of $48,000 is to be spent this year on initial permitting and engineering. PCN met up with Richard Kruger, Assistant Harbor Master, and Elaine Fiore, Kingston Selectman and Chair of the Dredging Committee, to get a sense of the magnitude and necessity of the dredging of Kingston Bay.
The Jones River has a rich history in boat building back at the turn of the century, and as things changed, they tried widening the river from its original base back in the late 30s or early 40s, and that changed the complexure of the waterfront quite a bit, in that as it widened, some of the silt or mud came in from the sides and went down over the natural gravel bed that was there, that was clay, and it was much deeper, so larger boats could come in and out. And some of the other things that have affected the river over the years is some of the dams have been opened up as we've tried to get some of the migrating fish back in again, herring and smelt and some of the other fish that come up and spawn in the rivers above. And as the dams were opened up, a lot of that silt, a lot of that leftover particle came into the river and kind of clogged it up quite a bit more. So it's really kind of filling into the point where this dredging project is really, really important for the community, for recreational boaters as well as commercial fishermen.
The reason why we're going forward with this project is the Kingston Bay has never been officially dredged in the history of Kingston. And what's happening now is the channel is getting shallow, so the boats aren't able to get out at low tide. And it's getting worse over the years as silt and debris get into the channels. So what this will allow is Kingston to maintain a coastal community with boating and all the activities surrounding it. Otherwise, we'll lose the depth in the channel and, in time, not be able to utilize it as we are today.
Once the dredging project has been completed, it's going to change how we operate quite substantially, in the fact that we'll be able to get out and assist boaters that in the past, if it was closer to a low tide, we couldn't get out and help someone who might be in trouble. We had to reach out to some of the other outlying harbor master departments in Marshfield or Plymouth or Duxbury for help. Whereas now, once the dredging project is completed, we'll be able to have access to the whole bay pretty much at all times.
The proposed dredging project is separated into 3 zones. Zone 1 being the creation of a Kingston channel, so boaters won't have to use the channel that currently runs through Duxbury. The channel would be approximately 20 feet wide and 6 feet deep during low tide, and would extend from Rocky Nook Point to the mouth of the Jones River. Zones 2 and 3 would follow suit to allow additional depth for large vessel accessibility. But projects like this don't happen overnight. Elaine Fiore explains that there are many levels of approval, not just that of town meeting.
Right now, the dredging project is, I would say, probably in its second phase. The first phase was going to town meeting and asking for the funding so we could move forward on getting permitting and an engineer. And that's where we are. We've got the funding, and now we're moving forward with identifying an engineer to help the town through the process of permitting. Through the permitting process, there's a lot of areas that are investigated, and a few of them are from an environmental perspective. They will investigate the conditions of the silt that will be removed, if it's contaminated or not, and depending on the condition of it, will depend on how we dispose of it. There's also shellfishing in the bay now, and oyster farmers. So all that will be taken into consideration through the dredging process and the permitting process to make sure that nothing is adversely affected. And then at some point in time, we'll see a big dredging machine in the bay, and that will be when actual construction will start and all the digging in the channel. That piece of it will be by Plymouth County. They've purchased a dredging machine, and they're supplying the labor to operate all the equipment necessary, and we will have our engineer overseeing the project.
The town of Kingston is currently storing the dredging machine, as it will be the first town to utilize it. Once the project is complete, other towns in the proposed regional dredging area will store and use the machine as needed. Though it may take some time, the dredging of Kingston Bay and the Jones River will assure Kingston's boating and fishing community will thrive well into the future. Reporting from the Jones River in Kingston, I'm Maureen Bates, PAC TV Community News in Depth.
We now welcome to the set Thomas Bott, the Kingston Town Planner. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're going to cover a number of things today, but first, tell me about the job of town planner. What do you do?
Well, typically a town planner is involved with the planning board, in many places almost exclusively. Works for the planning board on subdivisions, on site plan reviews, on special permits. These are what typical town planner functions are. In larger shops, there are two branches. There's the current planners that do those things I just talked about, and the long-range planners who work on the master plan, which is what we're going to talk about today. I hope.
Okay.
So in addition to that, I've been involved in other things as well, our Green Communities Act, our energy reduction programs. I work with the Board of Health and things like that on wind turbine mitigation, solar panels we're working on the landfill, doing some more additional sustainable energy production. So work with the Historic Commission on local historic districts, worked with the Adams Committee on revising the Adams Library building. Over the years, I've worked on a lot of things that are directly in my job description and things that are just sort of projects.
Right, but you tend to cross-pollinate with other departments within the town quite often as a town planner, correct?
Yeah, well, it's a small town, so
Right.
everybody has
Right.
things that they do. And, you know, one of the things that I do, at least for the planning board in regards to developments, is communicate those things from other departments and things like that back to the board for their decision-making purposes.
Okay, and you've been in your position since 1998?
Since 1998, yes.
Long time.
Yeah, I moved up from Atlanta to sort of make for a simpler life for our family.
Simpler life here in
Well,
Massachusetts.
small children at the time.
Okay.
They're much larger now.
Yes, I would hope so. They've grown.
But yeah, it was a matter of relocating to New England. My wife is from New England, so we were very eager to move up here.
And Kingston's a beautiful town.
Kingston's a beautiful town. I live in Plymouth.
Okay.
Just down the street.
Okay, yep, they're a beautiful town too. So why don't you talk to me about a master plan, the definition of it, how it happens, what goes on with it, the whole shebang.
Okay. Well, a master plan is a policy guideline.
Okay.
It doesn't have any rule of law. It basically is a snapshot of where are we at, you know, where are we going, and what do we want to do, and what can we do to sort of amend that path that we're sort of on. We look at trends and conditions and things like that. And there are various elements to the master plan. In addition to setting goals and visions, there's land use, there's housing, there's transportation, there's cultural and natural resources, there's open space and recreation. I have to check my notes to make sure I get them all, but there's essentially about 8 elements to the master plan.
Okay.
In addition, in this particular round, we're also doing a sustainability element as well to look at what are we doing and what can we do to make ourselves more sustainable in the practices we do.
Is a master plan a finite amount of time? Is it for a year or 2 years or 3 years, or does it depend?
Well, the plan is actually a process, and it
Okay.
doesn't really end.
Okay.
We did a master plan in 1970.
Okay, a long time ago.
We did one in 1998.
Yep, when you came.
And now we're doing one in 2015.
So none's been done since 98?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, when I was in Atlanta before I moved up here, I was the long-range planner for the city of Marietta. And there you do a master plan about every 5 years. So when Master Plan Committee in 1998, working under the excellent leadership of Paul Basler and Ralph Cowdery, 2 guys who sort of drove the process, they spent about 3 years on the master plan. And so when I got here, just at the end of the process, I was just doing some editing and doing some of those things, and explained to the committee that, well, you typically update a master plan every 5 years.
Right.
And with that, half the committee volunteered to resign. We cannot go back there. I said, well, here's Plan B.
Okay.
Because you got to have Plan B.
Right.
Plan B was, well, we'll do it every 10 years.
Okay.
And so in 2008, we were just on the cusp of the 2010 census.
Right.
And since that
right.
census information is used for a lot of the projections and information, we said, well, wait till 2010.
Okay.
And do a master plan. And then since then, we've been asking for money to get that funding.
Okay.
First time around in 1998, they had some funding and they had to go back and get some more. So we tried to lay out a process with some estimates to get the project fully funded, to try to get it done in a year.
How much does the master plan cost?
We budgeted $119,000 at town meeting.
Is it for research?
Essentially, we have a team of consultants that we
Okay.
brought on.
All right.
Because it's very hard for one person.
Oh,
to
I
do
would
that.
think so, right.
As I said, in some shops, there's a long-range planners and short-range planners. In Marietta, I was the long-range planner. I had a staff of 3
Yep.
and interns and a budget to go out and get consultants as necessary. Kingston's a one-planner town.
Okay.
And there's a lot of things going on.
So you got the funding
Got the funding.
in 2010.
Yep, we did an RFP,
Which is
and
a
request for proposals.
Okay.
Thank you for cutting through some of those
Yes,
letters. I won't use
RFP.
very few letters,
Okay.
hopefully.
Yeah.
But you'll straighten me out, I'm sure. A request for proposals to ask people to look at the plan. So we
Okay.
had 3 very good folks who looked at it.
Okay.
Who replied, and we selected Brovitz Community Planning and Design.
Okay.
And their team has 4 other folks with them, Niche Engineering, Flinker and Dotson, and the Principal Group, and I'll talk about what they do.
Okay.
But they're the team that we hired to help with this process.
Okay, so you have the funding and now you have the team.
Correct.
So now what?
So the master plan, it usually sets up a committee. So
Okay.
the planning board, who's in charge of doing the master plan, created a master plan committee, as we did in 1998. And they're composed of folks from the Board of Selectmen, Conservation Commission, Board of Health,
All town-
Citizens at Large,
town
Citizens at Large,
people, okay.
business representative, environmental representative,
Okay.
Open space and recreation.
Cross-section of
Yeah.
lots of different people. Okay.
And they're sort of the steering committee, and they're going to review a lot of these documents and help work through the process. But the master plan relies on the participation of the public,
Right.
which is one of the things I hope to talk about with your millions of viewers, and have them come to the various public meetings and forums we've got set up for the next year.
So that's what's really important, is getting the word out that, okay, now everything's in place. We need people to come listen to it and to weigh in on it.
To weigh in on it,
Okay.
because what we do is we look at, it's a snapshot of here's where we're at statistically,
Right.
with statistics and business development, and where do we want to get to, and have people bring their ideas to
Okay.
the table as well.
All right. So have you had any of these meetings yet?
We had a master plan kickoff meeting where our consultants met with the master plan committee. And at that point, the master plan committee introduced themselves, talked about the process. This is on May 11th. I think you can actually go back and look at old meetings if you go to your PAC TV
Yep, I'm sure.
website.
Yep, we'll put it up.
And look at those sort of things. So that one of the questions that our consultants ask is, well, tell us, master plan committee members,
Yeah.
3 things you think are terrific about Kingston and 3 things that are a challenge.
Right.
Just to sort of kick things off and get some perspective from them.
Yep.
And we talked about the process with them.
So what are the, if you could pick the 3 major components that you know are going to be part of this master plan, what are they?
Well, there's 8 components to the master
Okay.
plan. As we talked about, land use and housing and transportation. Those things that tend to get a lot of attention are transportation.
Right.
Because the people who drive in Kingston on Saturdays, and they're on occasion who are trying to get to the dump and get to places,
Yep.
there's a lot of traffic in Kingston. Essentially because all these roads intersect at Gene Creedon's house. Gene Creedon, a fabulous guy, an early proponent of planners in the master plan. He's 92. Gene, I hope you're watching. So that all converges in Gene's front yard.
Okay.
27, 106,
Yes,
53.
right.
So even with the new Route 44, it's taken some of that traffic off, but it's still a major issue.
Okay, so traffic is one thing.
Traffic is one. I think affordable housing is one.
Okay.
It's always been an issue.
Yep.
In 1969, the Commonwealth created a law because of Chapter 40, because of a crisis in affordable housing that hasn't gone away.
Right.
Under changes we made in zoning since 1998 with an inclusionary housing bylaw, we've added about 18 affordable units.
Great.
18
okay.
is great.
But you need more.
You
need a lot more. Okay.
So land use,
Yep.
affordable housing, transportation,
Yep.
economic development. We look at the mall.
Right.
And people worry about the mall.
Right.
Now the mall has made some strides here recently.
Right, the Kingston Collection now.
Kingston Collection, looking good with the theaters,
Yep.
the remodels of some of the shops in there, the coming of Latitude 360, because you've got to sort of have a destination for
Right.
you can buy socks anywhere.
Right.
But economic development is a big part
Yep.
of sustainability, of creating a tax base so people can benefit from those businesses and also from the taxes that they generate.
Right. Okay. So the next step is to publish your whole list of meetings and times and when people can go and where they can find information and where they can weigh in?
Yeah, well, we're a long way from publishing anything, but
Okay.
the meetings are, all the meetings are public meetings. So we
Okay.
had one on May 11th. That was our kickoff meeting. Our next meeting and I have to check my notes here, is going to be on June 11th, where we're going to talk about trends and conditions. Some people call it a SWOT, strength,
Yes,
weakness,
which is
opportunity,
opportunities and
threats.
threats, yep.
But some of those, threats, and people go, we're not threatened.
Right, right.
So we give it a sort of a softer sort of name,
Right.
trends and conditions. So we'll be meeting with the master plan committee in advance of our first public forum
Okay.
that we'll have at the end of June, on June 29th. And this is going to be inviting the public in to look
Where do
at.
you have these meetings, by the way?
Well, a lot of them are in the town hall. But if you're
Okay.
bringing the public in and you want to talk about things, you really don't want to have it in a government office building
Right.
all the time. So our next best facility in Kingston is the Reed Community Center.
Mm-hmm.
And the Reed is terrific because it's got the space for folks and things like that.
Sure.
So we'll have maps, we'll have drawings, we'll have.
I was just going to ask that.
yeah.
So you have a lot of audio-visual
Correct.
things for
and
people
then
to look at.
this will put us in a situation where we're in a setup for a big 3-day workshop that we're going to have in the fall, including a Saturday where there'll be drawing, there'll be sketches, there'll be maps, so
Mm-hmm.
people can bring those ideas in.
Now, do the people of Kingston end up voting on this, or is this up to the committee?
Under the law, the planning board approves a master
Okay,
plan.
okay. But everyone's been able to be involved
Oh,
all during this entire process.
Correct. It's not
Okay.
present and defend. It's
Right.
collect this information and put
Exactly,
something
and here's
together.
the best.
And what we did in 1998 is after the master plan was done and the planning board voted on it, we brought it to town meeting
Yep.
for sort of a ratification vote.
Sure, sure.
We did brief presentations at town meeting. Now, of course, that's up to the moderator whether
Mm-hmm.
she's going to permit that or not. But we presented the plan and talked about it. But the plan is a process. It's not a place and time.
Right.
It's a policy
Right.
guideline. So we move forward with those ideas that we
Right.
brought up to see where are we at with those.
And sometimes you need to adjust.
Absolutely.
Because of environmental factors or anything, right? I mean, anything can come along and blow something up and you go in a different direction. So you have to be flexible.
Yeah, figuratively or literally, I forget which one of those. But we don't want anything to blow up. But
Right.
things change, conditions
things change,
and,
right.
and you go back and look at those.
Okay.
So
Okay,
at
great.
the end, we make an implementation schedule that says these are all the things that came out of the master plan.
Yeah.
These are the things we hope to see done. These are the parties that were responsible for getting those things done.
Right.
And we'll go through that implementation schedule over the next 10 years. Because if you
Yes,
have
'cause-
a 5-year plan,
Yeah.
everybody quits.
Oh, right. Right. So you got to keep it going.
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, so lots to look forward to with the master plan in Kingston.
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching PCN In Depth. Replay times are listed at pactv.org, or you can find us on YouTube. We hope the show has given you a better understanding of your town, and we look forward to bringing you more. Good night.